الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. وقل ربي زدني علما ونعوذ من همزات الشياطين ونعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا بفضلك وكرمك علما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. لا يتخذ المؤمنون الكافرين أولياء من دون المؤمنين ومن يفعل ذلك فليس من الله في شيء إلا أن تتقوا منهم تقاه ويحذركم الله نفسه وإلى الله المصير. صدق الله مولانا العظيم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses explains to us very succinctly a very critical and very important principle, and it has always been extremely significant, and in this day and age perhaps more significant than ever in history. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يتخذ المؤمنون الكافرين أولياء. The people of Iman, the mu'mineen, are not to take the disbelievers as awliya. So we need to understand, what does this awliya mean, wali. So wali, it has many meanings in the Arabic language. It can mean the friend, the helper, the ally. And so here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, and it's elucidated by other ayats. If we look at all of the various ayats connected to this, we will come to understand that to take the non-believers as our helpers and our allies, and from our hearts, loving them and preferring them over our own people, particularly when it's going to be, detrimental to the ummah, detrimental to Muslims, this is absolutely forbidden. Particularly in the case of, like the situation we had in the early days of Islam, and we had the mushrikun of Quraysh and others who were dead against Islam and were, making every effort to extinguish it. So you are not to take them as these types of allies, particularly when they are actually engaged in hostilities against Islam and against Muslims. Min dunil mu'min, as opposed to taking such allies and friends and helpers from the people of Iman. وَمَن يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ, and so whoever transgresses and actually, commits this type of activity or behaves in this fashion, فَلَيْسَ مِنَ اللَّهِ فِي شَيْءٍ. This is a behavior which has nothing to do and is outside the perimeters of the correct, the correct connection and obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, this is outside the perimeters of the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not from Allah min shay. So it has nothing to do with Allah because it is outside the perimeters of His obedience. إِلَّا أَن تَتَّقُوا مِنْهُمْ تُقَى. Now here's an exception. In the case that you are fearful that they're going to, take particular measures against you, and so you'll have to take measures to somewhat, to go along with them in one way or the other, so as to save yourselves from any particular type of harm that might be apprehended from them, that in this case there is no harm. So from this we might understand that, you can't have friends or you can't have associates or acquaintances or have relationships with non-Muslims. Actually, this is not the case. Because we see from the very beginning of Islam in Makkah and then also in Medina. So Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, although Muslims were a majority in Medina, pacts were made between Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and the Jewish community. Pacts were made also with the Christian community and others. So what is being inferred here is that we don't prefer our relationships and take on allies and helpers and friends and prefer them over Muslims and prefer them over our own people, particularly in the situation where that's going to bring detriment, to the Muslim ummah. which is happening a lot these days, right? I just read an interesting. Somebody sent a post that 55 Muslim states are not ready to try and engage with the new government of Afghanistan, but they're all lined up, waiting for the chance to deal with Israel. So what does that tell us? This is what we're talking about. I mean, why do we don't, we're not ready to deal with our own people, but we're ready to deal with others, which it's not just a common dealing, it is a dealing in which there's going to be definite, impacts, negative impacts to Muslims and to the Muslim Ummah. So this is what is being referred to here. That'll help us, you see. Okay, so now we have basically 4 statuses or 4 stations of interaction with non-Muslims. So one is this muwalat, which we talked about, in that to pledge allegiance and alliance to other than Muslims. We're allied to Muslims. Now, what does that mean? So we're a minority living in the United States or in other countries. So also Islam says you live by the laws of the land. You don't go outside of that. So this is not under that heading, At the same time, we don't make it a point to try and make unnecessary relations, other than with our own people. They're very close and very close relationships we should try and keep with our own people. And obviously, living in a country of non-Muslims as a majority, then we deal with them and we interact with them. We buy and sell from them. We can also treat them with kindness. And particularly this is called muasat, and showing mercy and kindness, sympathy. Some of them have necessities and difficulties, that we help them out. This is muasat, and this is very clear from the activities of Rasulullah sallallahu the early Muslims. They did this. Also muamalat, we interact with them, we have transactions with them, no issue. And then we have what we call mudarat. So we live according to the customs, because that's which are not juxtaposed to Islam. There's no harm in that. And as we mentioned also, this if we apprehend, problems and harm from them and deal with them in such a way as to ward off that, then there's no harm in an issue in that as well. So we have more to talk about on this subject, inshallah, and so as not to put everybody into the flight mode. So inshallah, we'll continue this tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.